it is being clear that Western democracies are not democratic, that democracy is a hoax under a capitalist economy, because the people elected in government have to do the interest of the money motive that runs our society. We've tried on the right, but the right is developing the same problems of the supposed left, which is, again, further detachment from the base. So I wonder whether now this time around in Italy was the same thing. We tried with the far right. The Meloni far right is giving the same results, as Francesco was pointing out, that the left, the supposed left, was giving. So now is it a moment to really break and ask for substantive change that does cater to the logic of need and not to the logic of profit?
We have only one word to say anything: capitalism. Okay, this is the root of anything, because if we limit normally our analysis to what is happening now, what it consists the genocide, without trying to understand what happened before and why is happening.
We're here today to bring a conversation about this incredible clash between the popular participation that is really speaking up for the global suffering and the incremental fascistization of governments, especially in the West. And this divide between those who we have elected and the people is getting wider, but this is also giving voice to people in wanting to participate and make a change directly rather than going through those who supposedly represent them in governments. We have here with us two very special guests to illuminate us on the Italian and the global situation. We have Francesco Staccioli, who is leader and national executive of USB, which is a grassroots union in Italy, young but emerging and spreading. And Francesco Schettino, professor of economics at the University of Campania in Naples, and expert on development, political economy, and income distribution. Francesco writes often on international journals such as the World Development Journal and the Journal of Economic Inequality, and he has a book coming up with Cambridge University Press called Saving Africa's Future, A Continent Falling Behind. Thank you so much for being here with us. To the Forum for Real Economic Emancipation. Let's dive right in. What is happening in Italy as we speak? What has been happening in the last weeks? Why is it so extraordinary and uplifting for Italian labor history?
And what's happening in Italy? More than 1 month ago, we wouldn't have any clue that what was going to happen. It was very fast and very surprising for everybody. This starts from dock workers in Genoa and dock workers in Leghorn. That are our trade union members, USB, that since June and July starting refusing to load and unload weapons to every war, especially for Israel. That's why our national delegate, Giuseppe Nivoy, has been called in a flotilla. The flotilla was leaving at the end of August, and this started a big rally of solidarity in all the country to bring food and humanitarian aid to the flotilla to bring to Gaza. And this surprised even us, because was so huge solidarity with this project of bringing aid to Gaza. That's where it started with the rally in Genoa, with the dock workers, our delegate dock workers say, if they block the flotilla, we block everything. It was very spontaneous movement, very spontaneous, because there was no big party, was no big trade union behind this or pushing this. The only union was USP, which is not a big union. Now it's a very famous union, but it's not so big. And everybody goes to the street, goes to rally, or goes to strike, just because he wanted to do this. Then happened that after the first general strike, we wait, and flotilla was attacked the night of the 1st of October, and the 3rd of October, when the second general strike, this time together with the main left trade union, with this CGL. This is one of the most participated movement in historic republic, the history of republic of Italy after the Second World War. No one predicted this. This one was so fast, so spontaneous, and this is what happened. We have a slogan. The main slogan of USB is abbassate le armi, alzate I salari, which is low down the weapons and rise up the salaries, because in Italy we have a problem of low salaries.
I find the slogan to be so capable of bringing people of all different groups together and finally avoiding the segmentation of the working classes that has been a key way for our capitalist economy to rule over people. I want to say also that as we are discussing, just yesterday, so the 7th of October, there were criminal charges pressed against the Meloni government and against the CEO of Leonardo for complicity with genocide at the International Criminal Court. So this is actually historic because it's the people of Italy who have pressed charges against their own government representatives, and especially against the biggest arm corporation in Italy, Leonardo, who has seen the stock prices fly up since October 7, 2023, of over 274%. So very, very important moment of voicing an opposition to the tendency for our economy to favor war over people. What about the reaction of the Meloni government? Has there been any sense by which the government has listened to this extraordinary mobilization of people? Or is this mobilization showing even more the separation and the antagonism between Italians and their representatives?
But this is a very interesting moment in our country. We are glad about our people, but we are still living a big contradiction, because from one side, we are still living very close to Gaza, where the genocide is going on. The people is dying. So this is not a good problem. We have a lot of internal contradictions, but at the same time, people coming in the street, the demonstrations, the capacity of the workers of blocking all the countries in the last weeks, not only one time, as Francesco said before, a lot of times in the same period, using the strike as the principal tool in order to block all the country. And this is an instrument normally used as the main tool in the struggle, class struggle, In my opinion, this changed a lot the sense of these demonstrations, because Clara, you asked before, and Francesco too was saying how to avoid the segmentation of the worker class. That it is probably the main point. It is not so clear because we are talking about a genocide, but these demonstrations, this movement that is growing in Italy is teaching that when you have an organization or some organizations such as the USB of Francesco Staccioli and other comrades, when you have an organization inside the production, the logistic, as you said before, this makes the difference. Because for a long period, we thought that the individualization of the way of making politics, such as the demonstration on Saturday, could be enough. Where I take my flag, I go on the street, and I think that I'm a person. I'm not part of an organization such as could be a political party or, for example, a union, not necessarily big, but also small. And this makes the difference, because when you try to work on the most important part of the capitalistic production, that means where each day the worker goes and decide to make strike, that means to reduce his salary, his monthly salary. And you know that in Italy we have a lot of problem of low salaries. We have a lot of workers that can be considered as poor. Make strike is very difficult, and especially when you see that a big part of population makes 2 strikes in less than 2 weeks, you are seeing something that is completely new, especially because we are talking about a strike that is not to change the condition of work, not to make salary growing up, but for a political reason. And it is completely new. As Francesco knows, when we went to the demonstration, we saw for the first time, and probably this is the reason why, that we saw a lot of persons living these big contradictions, living this genocide as a thing that is very close to us, because we are living in the Mediterranean Sea, and Gaza is there, is not so far. This is an important thing that Italian people understood. But if we don't have, as we do in this time, an important organization such as a union or political power, these important things that we created and nobody knew before it happened, because we were talking about with other comrades about this opportunity, but nobody can think that we had 2 million persons in so big period, more than 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Today we have another demonstration. When we finish this interview, we will go in Rome. We have a lot of thousands of people in the street, in each corner of Italy. This is the new thing. In the little city, we have the demonstration. This is the new thing, because the situation is changing and the government is making exactly what normally the left do. That is saying something that is completely wrong. For example, just the day before the last strike, Meloni said that we were making strike because we want a long weekend. And this is a very stupid thing, because you know that we pay for our strike, so we have the possibility to take the day for vacation. And I know a lot of workers in my university that decide to make strike after this declaration, you know. So they make the same mistakes that normally the far left used to do during other period of, no, fortunately not now. So the situation is very interesting and is changing rapidly. The thing that in my opinion is important to do is to completely avoid to put the political hat on this movement.
I take the opportunity to say, given that you're a professor at the university, the strikes and occupations are taking place also in high schools and universities. Can you tell us a little bit about how this strike, in fact, involves all sectors of the economy and of civil society?
I see. Yes, absolutely. This is the reality. Clearly, you have the movement that is stronger in the big cities, for example, in the University of Rome, of Naples, of Milan, of Bologna, of Florence. You have a lot of students. For example, in my university, that is not exactly in the big city, you have a different kind of mobilization of the forces. In my department, we have in the first strike 66% of the professor that makes strikes. In the second time, 25%. That is very high. It's the first time that we have a lot of professor making strike 2 times in the same week or in 2 weeks. This is very important. But you can feel that the situation is changing. It's the first time in probably from 2001. Then we are feeling in the street that there is another energy. Everyone is proud to put the keffiyeh. You take a plane and you see persons with keffiyeh with a big smile. saying, I'm with Palestine. This is the first time that we see flag on the window. What is happening, it depends of us, probably. If we will able to stay and see, to enforce the unions, to enforce the political parties, and leaving aside the idea that we have to put the hat on the movement. I don't know if in English sounds. Probably the movements can develop with the young persons that they are new to this kind of demonstration.
So going back to Staccioli, who was saying about how a lot of, you were mentioning how a lot of Italian workers have voted for the Meloni government. And for those who are not Italian, the Meloni government is indeed the far-right government that has fascist leanings, but also explicit origins in the sense it's an explicit connection with the Italian fascist party and the fascist dictatorship between 1922 and 1945. So in this sense, Francesco, do you think that this unity of solidarity, what Schettino said is very important, this is a political movement, a political strike, and we know how much political strikes are much more powerful than just economic strikes, because it's actually the political strikes that can challenge the foundation of our economic system. In the Red Biennium in 1919-1920, it was in fact the dock workers in Britain that were politically striking in solidarity with Russia when the Western troops were trying to interfere with the mobilization of workers in Russia. And this actually created a lot of turmoil and a lot of rethinking of the economic system in Britain itself. So it's very interesting to see how these movements of solidarity for political purposes are very promising in their capacity to shake the very pillars of capitalism, especially wage labor and private ownership of the means of production. And your motto, less war, more to the salary, more to the wages, really speaks to the common enemy, which is austerity. As I tried to articulate many times, austerity is not about spending less. Austerity is not a way to be virtuous and to live within our means. Austerity is about shifting resources away from social services, and Italy is suffering from the destruction of our welfare system for decades now, in favor of rearmament, surveillance, and the support of private investors. And we know that Italy, similarly to Gaza, by the way, and this maybe we can go back to, has been selling and giving up all of its strategic infrastructure to big international investors, even the telephone system. So my question is could it be that this political solidarity can be the beginning of a new unity and a new identity that can help solve the segmentation and this tendency for workers to often vote on the right, and then thus for governments that favor more austerity?
Well, this is a very big question because the movement of political solidarity with Gaza and Palestinians has been so huge. It's so big that it's quite difficult. Someone using Francesco previous word could put a hat on the top of this movement. What we say that I think we have to give a new hope to the working class in this country. Working class has lost any hope about politicians. Most of them doesn't go to vote anymore. We have usually in Italy people went to election to go and vote. We had a percentage of 80, 75, 70 percentage of people going to vote a political election. Then we have 50%. We have the last election in Calabria, which were less than 50% going to vote. We started from thinking that in this kind of capitalistic fast economy, the weak point is merchandise connection, the wares connection, not the merchandise, the wares connection. It means that ports, logistics, production, where the goods goes very fast. We have to break them. That's why we start studying the dock workers. Dock workers are a strategic place in the new economy, in the global economy, in the especially in Italy. In Italy, we have many ports, and the ports are the place where a lot of tons of wares pass every day. We want to start saying that in this particular place, the ports, dock workers are symbol of solidarity. Dock workers are symbol of struggles. Dock workers are symbols of the working class that could rise up and taking back their heritage, their future in their hand. That's why we are working from long period in the dock workers. And that's why maybe Francesco knows that we are working even the logistic and the logistic chain in Italy, which are people, most of them coming from abroad, are extra, how we say in Italy, extra communitarian immigrants from, and we started working on them as we work on transportation workers. We have to give to all the working class a perspective that maybe could transform in political option. If someone, not USB, because USB is a trade union, if someone can understand that the complicity, the left parties and main trade unions had with capitalistic economy has to has to be closed. We have to change the mind. We don't have to make. We have to say that we are ready to make compromise, but the compromise is not for the rich, for the poor. It's not for the owner, the employer, but for the employee. It's what we want to understand. We have to change the mind, to change the perception of the working class in this country. This working class in this country is 30 years. They are losing money, they are losing rights, they are losing position, they are losing power, and more they're losing power, more they're going to vote for the far right. Okay.
Yes. And also, the point is that they don't necessarily identify as the working class anymore. So actually, what I meant by political strike, and I think what also Francesco Schettino meant by this, is not at all that the aim is actually electoral politics and political in this narrow sense. What we meant is the fact that it's not just about economic demands that directly are self-interested, right? And we know that the traditional unions historically have been very conforming to the system because of their very narrow vision of what matters. And what matters is to protect only those who are unionized and to ultimately gain some benefits in terms of their struggle for higher pays, to diminish the rate of exploitation internally. I think the interesting thing here that seems to be coming out of the conversation we're having, as Francesco Staccioli is showing, is that there's something bigger, there's something broader, there's something more emancipatory in the sense that people are demanding something that is not just about themselves in a self-interested way, it's about others. And the fact that we are all in the Mediterranean and the Gaza people starving and dying, we feel close to us, is a feeling of selflessness that I wonder if it then can really help create a real sense of consciousness of the fact that electoral politics have profound flaws that need to be changed more fundamentally, right? And so how do we maintain the political momentum, but not flatten it out in a one party or one electoral process? How can this be something that is transformational in a deeper sense? And I think this is so difficult, of course, but I hope it can help get more imaginative. And that's why I want to ask, do you think the reaction of the Meloni government is helping promote this sense of disillusionment with politics in the narrow sense of electoral politics and potentially favor this movement that is stronger and should take a different face?
There is something bigger. Surely there is something bigger than what we saw before. There is something that we are having a lot of problem to understanding, because we have a new subject in the street, that they are the young people that don't used to go to vote, don't agree what government say normally. And you ask me if the government is favoring this feeling. I think, as I said, I tried to say before, that they made a lot of mistakes in terms of communications that surely helped the movement. And as I tried to say before, that is normally in the far left, but now is happened in this group that is very linked to the capital. They know how to use the communication. But probably there is something bigger, as you said, Clara, bigger than them, bigger than the government, because in the beginning, you talked rightly about the big divide between people, normal people, and the government. And we are saying exactly this fact, that people is on one side and the government is saying something completely to another side. And you can see clearly, if you see we have the television that is owned principally by Berlusconi. Everyone knows that is far right person that died a lot of years ago. But this is the normal opinion that has the government, that is completely different than what you see in the street. They are talking another language. Probably they are talking to older people, and this is the reason why you have this result of the last elections in Calabria, when only 43% of persons went to vote, as it happens also in another important region of the central Italy, Marche region, the same results. But at the same time, the government seems to have a fear that we are not used to see in their face. If you see the expression of Meloni when she said, I say in Italian, un lungo weekend non va d'accordo con la rivoluzione, was a very strange face. Normally, she is very sure about what she says. She is very confident about their words. In this case, she was in difficulty. She does not want to talk to the journalists, the newspapers, because she does not want questions. She wants only to speak. And in this period, she knows, because she's coming from the people exactly like us, that the majority of the country is against them, because they are, as you said in the beginning of this podcast, she is very linked to Netanyahu. They are sustaining a criminal action against the population. This is an important thing that we have highlighted every time we talk about this government. Because when, for example, I see on the newspaper talking about Netanyahu is a criminal. He's a gangster. But not for me, not for Clara, not for Francesco, for the international court. And nobody they say the president Netanyahu, not the criminal Netanyahu, as the other person of this government. But the people in the streets, they know about this. And the television say another thing. Because this big divide is the real point. And this is probably the way they are managing all the situation. I'm talking about the government, the Italian government, is completely wrong from this point of view.
I know that maybe Meloni is not the majority of this country. Meloni has been voted by 25-26% of the people in Italy. No, and as a majority, because the other 50% didn't go to to vote at all. The problem is ours, but not the problem is ours. The problem is putting together the people that doesn't like Meloni, doesn't like far right movement, doesn't like Trump, doesn't like Netanyahu, the criminal. Netanyahu doesn't like. We have this problem is putting them together, and because when Meloni say things absolutely stupid about the movement, now the long weekend. I mean, it's like renounce one day when he strikes, cut off one day of the wage, the monthly wage. They say this is vacation. They are not talking to the workers. She is talking to the fat, the belly of the country, which like Berlusconi did, like maybe Trump did, does in the USA, the belly of the country. We have everything. It's good. The best of this country was on the square. It was on the street in the last weeks. But our problem is giving them a chance, giving them a way to believe that something could really change. What happened in these strikes, what happened on every rally of these long months just passed, is a way to give them something to believe.
The real challenge here then is whether we can maintain the momentum of this new movement that is made of young people and disenfranchised people, even with these fake solutions of the current peace deal that are definitely going to, at least I think, give a sense of resolution to a conflict that will need a lot more to be really resolved. And the other point, though, is that I think really Italy right now, just like in many other countries, again, we are seeing this explosiveness of the misrepresentation, this fact that it is being clear that Western democracies are not democratic, that democracy is a hoax under a capitalist economy, because the people elected in government have to do the interest of the money motive that runs our society. And this is very clear in Italy, but it's very clear also in the United States. And the reason why people have been so disenfranchised from the democratic government and the Democratic Party in this country has been, of course, for the same reason, is that the Democratic Party has not been able to cater to at all to the interest of the people. And now I think what is interesting is that people have gone far right as a way to say, no, we are done with the technocratic elitism of the supposed left that only represents big business anyway. And the fact that also Congress is not able to stop the $21 billion that Biden and Trump have been giving to Israel, but also to many other conflicts in this world, is a very good example of the fact that clearly people don't believe in this way of organizing society anymore. We've tried on the right, but the right is developing the same problems of the supposed left, which is, again, further detachment from the base. So I wonder whether now this time around in Italy was the same thing. We tried with the far right. The Meloni far right is giving the same results, as Francesco was pointing out, that the left, the supposed left, was giving. So now is it a moment to really break and ask for substantive change that does cater to the logic of need and not to the logic of profit? So this seems to me the real question. Before we go, the genocide in Gaza was the catalyst that sparked the momentum for this novel mobilization in Italy, very representative of what's happening also everywhere else in the world. We said there more than 2 million people went on a general strike, something unseen in the history of Republican Italy. This momentum needs to be kept alive for it to grow and become concretely an alternative for the Italian people in this big divide between civil society and our governments that then again really represents the problem of advanced capitalism in the 21st century. The incapacity of the system to produce a democratic semblance, this anti-democratic essence is being very much revealed. So my question, Francesco, is how do we make sure that the current peace deal that definitely is giving us all a moment of relief in knowing that Palestinians are not being bombed every second, how do we avoid, though, this peace deal to become an excuse for our mobilization to stop? And I guess why I want to ask you this question is because if we look deeper at this deal, we see that it's not against the logic of plunder and depredation of the global South that is intrinsic in the problem with our socioeconomic system. And it's the same plunder that we've been witnessing in Italy. Italy has privatized and sold all of its resources to the international investors, most of its resources at least. How can we understand what's happening in Gaza now in line with what has happened historically in that region? I know you wrote articles on the water resources, on gas resources, on the capturing of what was of the Palestinians is no longer of the Palestinians. And how can we fit that in the global context of what happens regularly to the global South and especially Africa, which is your focus of research?
The important thing is to avoid the silence. Avoid that they turn off the light. This is important because when they stop the bombing, probably they can use it. The media, the mainstream media, can use it to say the war is over. So why you are demonstrating about what? The Palestinian people sign an agreement. Hamas and Israeli made the disagreement. What do you want more? But this is the big problem that we have. Understand what is happening there, and we have only one word to say anything: capitalism. Okay, this is the root of anything, because if we limit normally our analysis to what is happening now, what it consists the genocide, without trying to understand what happened before and why is happening this and what happened other things before, we don't make a good work. This is the reason why I am very happy that you cited the exploitation of natural resources. We know that offshore we have a big resource of oil in front of Gaza. You know that you have a big block where they were attacked. The flotilla was attacked only 1 week ago, and yesterday too. This was exactly the point when they found a big resource of oil. That means money. That means a lot of resources for a capitalism. And this is another important thing that we have to say, that now is living a big crisis. This is the other element that we have to take into account in order to understand what is happening, because what is happening in Palestine is a genocide, we know, but is the reflection of a not so clear, not so explicit war or conflict between the two most important blocks in the world. That is the dollar, the capital linked to the dollar, against the capital linked to the Asian currencies. So this is a typical contradictions internal to the mode of production that means war. But this is not the first time, because Ukraine versus Russia in the last years, today, yesterday, tomorrow, is the same thing. It's the same story. Capitalism means war, especially when they have crisis. Imagine this world without the China, without the GDP of China, without the effective demand of Chinese people. Imagine this world. Imagine this world without the resources of Africa that you cited before. So this war still in this phase that we can say clearly imperialist lived with the exploitation of workers of each part of the world, of the resources, especially of the so-called third world countries. So if you go to Africa, we saw you made we are colleagues, Clara, you know that we have a lot of literature talking about the miracle, the growth miracle in Africa. If you go to see what is happening in this country, you see that you have a big divide. Inequality is growing. Poverty is always the same. It's a continent that is falling behind. Why? Because we have international capital that is continuing to exploit everything that they can, starting from oil, from natural resources, from everything they can. We always using the same politics, such as it happened to Palestine. Because if you see Israel and we don't understand that we have an identity, USA, Israel, in this period, we cannot make a good job. And this is the most difficult things to say to the people that now is demonstrating in the streets, because they are in the streets, they saw the images, they saw the babies without the legs, they saw the genocide online for the first time on YouTube, as someone says. So this is the first movement they had inside themselves. But we have to avoid that segmentation that we said before. So we have to discuss. We have to found movements such as the one that we have today in Rome to discuss with that person, to avoid that they think that is only a military thing against the Palestinian. It's a capitalist thing against the workers of all the world, not only of Palestinian. It's a bigger thing.
This is exactly the point, is that we need to say we are all Palestinians, not just because of the possibility of all ending up being victims of this large technologies, very sophisticated technology of death that capital is producing, but also because it's the same type of economic system that extracts resources and makes us dependent more and more on this precarious financial investment that is only based on maximizing profit margins. So this is really the point, is I guess we have to see if we're able with what is happening now, as you said, that is just brought to light the extreme violence, to make a more deeper reasoning. And that's the reason why the economic dimension is never discussed. We had here with us on our last podcast, Adam Tooze, to discuss the economic dimension of the reconstruction plan and who profits. We had with us also Ibrahim Shikaki, who discussed dependency theory related to Palestine. These are the conversations that the mainstream media never wants to have. Why? Because it goes deeper and it shows the connection. It shows why our solidarity for Palestine is much deeper than just the current genocidal moment, because we are in the same boat. And of course, Italy is the periphery of Europe. And the peripheries, I'm right now in Oklahoma. Oklahoma is the periphery of the American empire. The extraction of resources that happens towards the natives historically has happened here and continues to happen with the drilling and the investment that comes from abroad that takes away from people to bring profits elsewhere. This is a global story. And I guess the point here is that we need to keep this in mind in order for the movement not to die, to say, okay, this was a manifestation. Let's not fall prey of the idea, well, now they found a peace deal, it's all resolved, we can go about our normal business as usual, because actually this is just very surface solution to deeper problems that only if the people participate in will ever change. And I think this is really important. I would like to close with asking, what about your students? Do you see in your students and in the younger generation this eagerness to go deeper in the conversation and to look at the wider story? Do you think there's potential there?
They ask. It is a very good thing, because normally, I'm professor of economics in a department of law. They don't love economics. for the first time that I talk about economic of genocide, the book about Francesco Albanese, and they are very curious. They don't used to be involved in movements because, I stay in a city that is not far from Naples, but culturally is far. So they don't use to make occupation, for example, demonstration inside the university. But I can see that they are very curious. They make a lot of questions. They ask me after the lesson about what is happening in Palestine for the first time. This is, I can say, I see a new light in their eyes, never seen before. This is a good news.
Absolutely a good news. And thank you so much, Francesco. I know that you just yesterday, also to conclude with an uplifting note of those who are courageous. I know yesterday in your in your radio channel, you interviewed Federica, who was a 20-year-old girl who was part of the flotilla. She was on those boats. Can you just give us a few words about the courage you saw in this young girl and how this can help us all maintain our courage?
Well, it was a terrifying story. I want to say that I was very scared about what happened. She was wonderful, saying everything that happened, but I never imagined that in this moment in which the Israeli army took her and bring her in the prison, happened what she said. It is very impressive. They use violence at each level, and I didn't imagine something like this. When she said me so, when we made the podcast, I was almost crying because it was very violent.
And now how is she thinking about using this experience, you think, to maintain, to move her demands forward?
I don't know. We have now in 1 hour the assembly. We say a movement in a square inside Rome in Piazza Vittorio, and we will talk about what we call equipaggio di mare and equipaggio di terra. It means the person that were on flotilla and the person that were on the land sustaining this person. So we have to discuss, and probably I will try to insert this economic dimension that, from my point of view, I agree with you, is fundamental in order to understand what is happening at the world level. We have a class struggle. The Palestinian means that.
Thank you so much, Francesco. It was such a pleasure to have you here, and I can't wait to also come to Italy and participate, but we are also trying to build movement here in Tulsa. As we say, it is a global movement, and we all have to continue to struggle. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Clara.
Grazie Francesco, un bacio, ti faccio sapere quando esce, così lo pushiamo.